justice coming down, coming down. It's divine justice coming down. Divine justice coming down, coming down. Divine justice coming down.
Well, and let's go back to China, because that, I think that is probably our biggest threat right now. At least that's what I feel. Because, is it Xi Jinping? I may not got his name right, but I mean, he just became, for all intents and purposes, emperor for life. At that 20th Congress, and they perp walked that other leader out, and they're saying now that he is set up to just get more aggressive. And you wrote in your book, and it's the headlines that were just a few weeks back. China is preparing for war. He's told his people to prepare for war.
Yeah. During his big speech, when he was, during that party Congress, he made it very clear that unification with Taiwan is a huge priority for him.
Yeah.
And they're not going to, rule out the use of military force. And then, sometime later, then he, announced, hey, it's time for the military to prepare for war. Now, why would China have to prepare for war? Because no one's going to invade China. No one's going to attack China. But the only reason they have to prepare for war is if they invade Taiwan, then, well, they have a war. In fact, they would be at a state of war with the United States.
Absolutely.
Now, once that happens, people need to understand, once that happens, you're not going to want to go out and get prepared for the war, because almost instantly, as soon as the US and China are in a state of war, and that will happen instantly once China decides to invade Taiwan, you might not get any warning that that's about to happen. The moment that happens, the flow of goods and services from China stops.
We're cut off.
Yeah, we're cut off. So the vast majority of the basic ingredients for our pharmaceutical drugs, excuse me, come from China. So already, right now, we have, according to the US government, we have shortages of more than 100 pharmaceutical drugs right now as we do this program. But once war with China happens, our pharmacies will empty out really fast.
Absolutely.
For your medicines, for your drugs, for the pills that you take, they'll be almost all totally gone almost immediately. And of course, China makes so much of our electronics,
yeah,
our shoes, our clothing, countless other products that fill up our retail stores come from China. The flow of all those goods will be gone pretty much almost immediately. In the
semiconductors.
And your lifestyle, all of our lifestyles will change completely and utterly and dramatically from that point forward. And then, of course, Dmitry Duduman was shown that once the United States goes to war with China, Russia will strike without warning. And so that, we're looking for that threshold to be crossed of US and China going to war, because that's when things with Russia get to a very, very alarming stage.
Well, and that was Henry Gruver and Dmitry Duduman were two of the ones that really impacted me as a young man. Back in 1984, I got baptized in the Holy Spirit, began to have dreams and visions. And when I met Henry Gruver back in 1994, 95, we became friends because I shared with him. You brought up pharmaceuticals. I shared that with my family, and I had one relative that said, they have a drug for that. They can help you with that psychosis that you have going on. So that shut me down for many years, and because I didn't understand it. But when I met Henry Gruver, we became friends, and he gave me understanding on how to deal with that, and how to pray about that, and have God show you that. But his visions were, he had one about China invading the West Coast. Dmitry Duduman's was a little bit more, I think, detailed as far as when China attacks, then Russia will attack. And those are probably the two men that that has stuck with me over the years. And I've been watching, I mean, since when I first heard of Dimitri, I think it was in 94, 95. Every year I watch, and things are always about right for those kind of things to happen. And I've always wondered, how is it going to happen? And now I'm looking around going, we're there. We are there. Are we not?
Yeah, so many things we've been waiting for many, many years are now happening. They're in the headlines. They're here. They've arrived, and that's why, the end times message. For so long people were saying, "Oh, we're living in the end times." That Jesus is coming back, but we weren't quite there yet. But now the message needs to change, like I said in the book, because we're there, we're here. Even a couple of years ago, I wrote Lost Prophecies of the Future of America, and I had Dimitri Duduman and Henry Gruver in there, but so many others that saw that war with Russia is coming. And at the time I put the book out, a lot of people were like, oh no, Michael, a war with Russia, that's crazy. No, that's not going to happen. But now here we are, a couple of years later, we've got war with Russia. And, and then in the same book, war with China. And people are like, no.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there's not going to be war with China as much. Even a couple of years ago, Christians, charismatic Christians, big names. They tell me, no, we're not going to have a war over Russia. A war with China, Michael? No, that's crazy. But now, we're on the verge of war with China, and so that's in the headlines. And so, these things that, and God always warns us way ahead of time,
Amen.
Sometimes
Amen.
we get visions, or, people get these, have these experiences with God, and it comes with this real sense of urgency. So we want to tell everyone, we want to get the message out there. And
We think it's going to be tomorrow.
Yeah, but they don't always come tomorrow. Like I said, often God warns us way, and we see it in the scriptures. Often God warned people way ahead of time,
Yes.
years ahead of time, sometimes decades ahead of time, but then it didn't happen right away. And the people said, oh, hey, we're still going to party. We're going to have a good time. These things you're warning about, they haven't happened. But they inevitably do happen. Time runs out, and they do happen, and they do come, just like God said they would. So we've been warned about so many of these things that would be coming, and now they're here, and so many of them are happening all at once, but still the vast majority of the population is not awake. Not only that, the vast majority of the church, of the
Amen.
Christian world, is not awake. In fact, the vast majority of churches don't even want anything to do with these warning messages. In fact, if churches were doing their job, people like me wouldn't even be needed, Chris. I would be
absolutely
job, because people would be like, yeah, all these things you're saying, Mike, we already heard, from our pastor, on Sunday or whatever, but the fact that there are so few voices which are sounding the alarm means that people like me, people like you are greatly needed. In fact, I wish there were thousands and thousands and thousands of others sounding the alarm, but there just aren't. There's just not that many, and that's extremely unfortunate.
Well, I noticed back in the 80s, everybody was talking about Bible prophecy and how close we were getting, and everybody was getting worked up. And now you see this normalcy bias. They've all been talking about it, praying about it, but when it's here, they don't see it, or they just reject it, or they're willfully ignorant of it. How do you explain that?
Yeah, well, I think society as a whole has become a lot less Christian than we were in the excuse me, than we were in the 1980s. The percentage of, excuse me,
Bless you.
the percentage of evangelical Christians continues to drop. And then society as a whole has become much more liberal. I mean, you look at 1988, 11% of Americans approved of gay marriage. Today it's 70%, including close to half of all evangelical Christians. I don't even know how that works, but so all society has become a lot has turned away from God. So much of the even evangelical church has fallen into apostasy. And so, and people take the Bible a whole lot less literally. So a lot less people actually believe that Jesus is coming back, or that the events described in the book of Revelation or elsewhere about the end times are literal.
Yes.
And so, and then so many of the remaining pockets of evangelical Christianity have fallen into various false doctrines or bizarre beliefs about the end times, or different things. And so there's just a lot less people, I think, out there that actually believe what the Bible has to say, even though it's starting to happen right in front of our eyes. Now, the good news, I believe, as really great and dramatic shakings start to happen, that Bible prophecy will once again become one of the most hottest topics in the entire world. And people will be very interested all of a sudden. Well, what does the Bible describe what's happening in our world today? Is all these terrible, terrible things are happening, or did God tell us about these things in advance? And I believe it'll be a great witnessing tool to bring a great harvest of souls to the kingdom.
Yeah,
that's the
absolutely.
good news. But up to this point, there's been so much hardness of heart, so much falling away, so much apostasy. The Bible warns us about, but we've really seen it, and it's been so true, especially here in the United States of America.
Yeah, so many pastors have fallen away, and we're running out of time. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. There's a couple of things that I wanted to bring up though, and one of them you wrote in your book is something that just made me sit up and go, "Oh wow!" Was these red heifers. I live out here in West Texas, and just 50 miles away from me is one of those ranchers that raise those red heifers, and we have sent, is that not right, Michael? 5 of them, September the 19th, off to Israel, unblemished.
Yeah, it's exciting. Like I said, so many of these things are coming together all at once, because we were always told that the Jews needed a red heifer in order to rebuild the temple in Israel. And so we've been waiting for that, and for decades, Bible prophecy programs have been talking about it. Oh, well, we need a red heifer, and
right.
Rumors. Oh, red heifer has been found. Oh, but not really. And for years and years and years this went on, but now this year, a group of Christians here in the United States had been helping to search for red heifers, and 5 perfect red heifers were found. And the requirements for them were extremely strict, because rabbis would go over them with a magnifying glass, and there can't
every inch. Yep.
Apparently 2 non-red hairs on the entire.
That's
animal.
right.
And they can't be flawed in any ways. And most ranchers around the world, when they tag their heifer
right
in the ears, and that disqualifies them, and so forth. But there were ranchers here in the United States that were aware of that, and they didn't tag the red heifers when they were born, and now 5 have been sent to Israel, and they landed, and there was video of that, and I wrote about that on my websites, and it's in the book. There's a chapter in the book about it, in the 43 chapters, and now so the 5 red heifers have arrived in Israel, and they're all very young. And so they're not going to qualify, because the red heifers have to be 2 years old, 2 years and 1 day old.
Yes.
Heifer ceremony, according to the tradition, according to Jewish tradition. So that's not going to take place until 2024. But then if they're not used, then they're disqualified because they're too old. So there's a very strong likelihood that we're actually going to see a red heifer ceremony in Israel for the first time in more than 2,000 years in 2024, which is very interesting to me. And so this is another thing which is pointing to the fulfillment of Bible prophecy. So many things that we've been waiting for, but it's exciting, Chris.
Yeah, it really is. And there's so many directions I could run with that, because there's talk about they don't need the temple. All they need is an altar, and they've purchased a place up on Mount of Olives. And that is a whole nother discussion. But the last thing I want to cover, because you cover it in your book, and you cover it very well, and it's something that's in our face right now, and that's a famine that's hitting us, and that's going to hit us hard. And I don't think that the people here in the United States, we see that in countries of Africa. I lived in South Africa for a couple of years and had gone up into other countries. But it's something we've never seen here, and I believe that we're gonna get hit harder by it than we've ever seen it in a long time.
Yeah, and when I wrote about famines a couple of years ago, people were like, "No, Michael, global famines, people starving. No, it's not going to happen." But now, the Secretary General of the United Nations is warning there will be multiple famines in 2023. In fact, right now in Eastern Africa, people are dropping dead from starvation right now, but people don't see it on the news, so they don't think about it. In Eastern Africa, several nations collectively more than 7 million animals, most of them livestock, have already
Yeah.
died because of the drought
Yes.
and things going on there. You know, it's horrible right now. You know, the World Food Organization is warning that what we're facing is truly unprecedented. They warn that global hunger just continues to spread and spread and spread. And but the big problem, Chris, is the food that wasn't grown this year, that wasn't harvested here recently during harvest season, that won't show up on store shelves.
That's right.
2023, you know, in Europe, they just have been going through the worst drought in 500 years. All over Europe, agricultural production way down. I give a lot of numbers about this in the book. In China, the worst drought in their recorded history, agricultural production way down there.
Yes.
India, they've been going through terrible drought. They recently banned exports of broken rice and then greatly restricted exports of other types of rice. And they normally feed 100 other countries with the right to export, which is a major, huge deal. Here in the United States, the western half of the country has been enduring the worst multi-year mega drought in 1,200 years.
Mike,
ahead.
I'm in here in Texas, and this is the worst we've had in 1,200 years. We had stock trailers lined up down the highway trying to get rid of their cattle because they couldn't feed them. They can't grow the hay. And so they just had to sell them. They had to get rid of them.
It's true, and the number of the national cattle herd is shrinking in size steadily because so many ranchers are selling off their cattle because they're being forced to because of the drought. And normally, if there was drought in one area, they'd send the cattle to another area where there wasn't drought. But like the whole western half of the country is
where are you going to send them to? Yeah.
So when they sold off, as they sell off all the cattle, well, that's stabilizing meat prices in the short term. But then next year and beyond, there's going to be a whole lot less cattle to go around. Meat prices are going to go up and up and up. In fact, one rancher in Oklahoma, he's saying, hey, the price of ground beef is eventually going to hit $50 a pound, I think it was. I have the exact number in the book. But
that's crazy. I think that's what you said.
But yeah, it's getting crazy. And we were facing a tomato shortage in California, where California normally produces 20% or more of all the tomatoes in the world, and they're not going to grow nearly as many tomatoes this year. And there's so many more aspects of this. And one of the huge aspects of it is the price of natural gas is going crazy all over the world, which is affecting fertilizer prices. Fertilizer prices have tripled or more in various places around the world. And so all over the world, people are cutting back, or here in the United States, farmers are still using fertilizer, but they have to pass the costs along to consumers. Food prices have been going up dramatically, and they're going to go up even more no matter what the Federal Reserve does. You know, they can't stop food prices from going up because we've got a supply problem with food. And so all this, and I have so many numbers about this in the book, but food supplies just keep getting tighter and tighter all over the world. And then, of course, the war in Ukraine. Ukraine is normally one of the key bread baskets for the world in terms of exporting food. Now, those exports have been greatly restricted. So many things are working together to create this perfect storm of food supplies, food shortages. In wealthy Western countries like our own, we're mostly noticing it in terms of rapidly rising food prices, which is a lot more expensive to go to the grocery store. In other countries around the world, there are food shortages. And in the poorest countries, like we see in Africa right now, people are literally starving to death. And unfortunately, Chris, this is going to get worse and worse and worse. But we were warned it was going to happen. Matthew chapter 24, Jesus said famines would be one of the signs. And we see in the book of Revelation, famines. You know, famine is one of the great things that happens, you know, once the seals are broken. So famine is something we have wanted to watch for. Famine is one of the things that is here, along with wars and rumors of wars, along with pestilences.
Yes.
I posted an article about RSV. I didn't even mention RSV in the book, but that's another pestilence. It's now ripping across America. Our hospitals are filling up with children and elderly that have RSV.
I read that article this morning.
Another pestilence that's come along, you know, and so all these things and great natural disasters. We've seen a lot of major earthquakes around the world recently. The natural disasters are going to get a whole lot worse. All these signs are coming together all at the same time, and so people need to understand these really are the end times. If people want to, you know, and things are going to get a lot worse. But the good news is God puts you here during these times for a reason.
Amen.
And he's got a job for you to do.
Got a purpose. Absolutely. Michael, we could spend all day on this. There's so much going on. I want to thank you for taking the time to share with us. What I'd like to do, if you could just go ahead and tell people how they can get your book, where it's available at, and then we'll call it a day.
Yeah, if people go to any of my websites, the economiccollapseblog.com, endoftheamericandream.com, or themostimportantnews.com, then when they go there, they'll see the ads for the book on any of the pages of the website. You just click on those, and it'll take you straight to Amazon.com, where the book is available in paperback and Kindle format, whichever you prefer. Or you can just go straight to Amazon.com and type in Michael Snyder End Times, and it'll come right up for you. And the response has been overwhelming. Just within the last couple of days, we were close to the top 1,000 of all books sold on
oh, wow. That's great.
We're the #1 new release in Christian eschatology. And we're ranking in a bunch of other categories. So the book just came out, and we're already doing so well with it, and the response has been so positive, and people are loving the book. So very excited about that, and I very much appreciate you having me on to talk about it today, Chris.
Well, thank you very much for coming. God bless you, and I can't wait for your next book.
Well, thank you, Chris.
All right.
Divine justice coming down, coming down. It's divine justice coming down. Divine justice coming down, coming down.